Hey everyone, and before we get into this week's episode, just want to announce Chris this very week has appeared on Digging for Kryptonite podcast with Anthony DeSanto.
It was absolutely great. We did he's been doing this whole run of episodes talking about Superboy, and whether there needs to be a Superboy in Superman's history. He hasn't fully gone through everything, and he is going to have both of us on in the future to talk about the TV series.
Yeah, I think we're going to do a top 10 list or something of our favourite episodes, so that should be fun.
Yep. But because I started reading comics, back in the 70s, the late 70s, when it was Superboy and the Legion of Superheroes, he invited me on to talk about that period of time, especially considering that there was the two hardcovers that were just put out within the last 2 years of Superboy and the Legion. And of course, the first issue that I ever got of a comic is actually in volume 2 of those books.
There's a really great bit that Chris actually talks about on the podcast where you reveal that you were actually taught to read on that comic, and I thought that was a really interesting little detail. Sorry to spoil it. I just completely spoil it, but never mind. But yeah. It was really good, enjoyable listen. I've literally watched it all myself just this very morning. But yeah, we'll both be on the show at some point as well as guests. And so check the link in the description. You can go straight to this very episode that Chris was on, and I hope you all enjoy it. And anyway, let's roll the title sequence and get into the episode proper. See you in a bit.
Hello, Superboy Beyond fans. Welcome back. As always, it's me, Chris, and with me, as always, Tom. We're here for our part 2 of our Threesome commentary. For those of you who watched last week, you know that we did Threesome part 1, which is a little bit of a guilty pleasure for both of us, the two-parter, because it's the one time where we got to see the classic trope of the villain team-up.
It's amazing it took this long, really. I mean, the closest we had before this was maybe Super Menace, when Superboy himself briefly became a bit of a villain. That's the closest we came, really. I guess Luthor and Bizarro, but Bizarro I don't count as a villain, really, either. Bizarro's just easily led.
He's just stupid.
He's just a bit stupid, yeah.
And I know Douglas Barry Myers is probably looking at that saying, "What?"
Oh, he was. That was the whole point of To Be Human, was having to teach Bizarro not to be, And it's apparently part of his biology as well, because as soon as he became human again, he could no longer speak like a regular person. So it was a weird one. A brilliant episode, brilliant two-parter, but some of the explanations are a little bit odd. Yeah, let's get back into Threesome and finish this up.
So, for those of you who are just joining us, this is not a typical reaction video. You're not going to see any clips of the episode, not going to hear any audio. There is going to be a very, very, very highly filtered version of the episode right up there. Okay. And that's just so you can keep in track with us as you're watching, because we know what happens. You're watching a video, and then all of a sudden the phone rings, the doorbell rings, the mail comes, you got to run to the bathroom, you need a snack, and you can't get back in touch. Well, this is our way to help you to do that. So just get your DVD ready. This is going to be disc 2 of season 4, episode 15, Threesome part 2. So I'm going to count you in with a 3, 2, 1, boom. Okay. So 3, 2, 1, boom.
I just had to stop myself because I was going to talk about the intro again, and it's been so long. I mean, when was the last time that we did talk about the intro? Like, we've been getting better at it, but oh well. Because we've already seen part 1 of this episode, there's not much to say until the episode actually really begins. But yeah, be sure, go and check out the first part if you haven't seen it already. Otherwise, you might be a little bit lost, purely because you'll only be getting half of our discussion on it.
Yes.
We may have to write Vexman into season 5 at some point. Maybe we'll do a flashback episode and we finally will tell the origin.
And then, of course, we've got our obligatory in the previous Superboy episode sequences.
Mm.
And, you know, as you pointed out last time, you know, that bald cap really does look good on Lex.
It's a really good bald cap. I actually think I have a photo that was taken during this episode, because I'm fairly sure he's in that exact prison uniform in the photo, but there's like a really close shot of it. And the only thing about the bald cap that didn't quite work was one of the seams almost looked like he had a scar down the side of his head. But part of me actually even quite likes that. Like, I don't know, it adds a little bit of grit to the bald cap. It's not just smooth skin.
Yeah.
I'm sure if you search on Google Images, Sherman Howard, Lex Luthor, that's probably one of the photos that comes up, because I'm fairly sure that's where I saw the image. I don't think it's one that I was ever sent. I know I've definitely seen it on Google before. But yeah, I do like her jacket thing. It's very reminiscent of Llewellyn's, in my opinion. But then again, I guess it's also a little bit Joseph and the Technicolor Dreamcoat, isn't it?
Yeah.
There's a little bit the Sixth Doctor about it as well. Although, actually, if Colin Baker as the Doctor wore a rainbow coat that was more like hers, I actually think it would have been a little bit better received. It's not quite as in your face. A little bit more subtle, you know. I tell you what, I miss the old light up signs with the glittery effect and stuff. Like, it's all just, you don't really see that as often anymore. It's thought of as a little bit gaudy and yeah. Unless, I suppose, if you go to like Vegas or something like that, then it's still the norm. That is a bloody good plan. A really good plan.
Yeah, blanket it for what did he say? 3 miles around?
3 miles, yeah.
There's no way he could get back into the city.
Literally, the only thing he'd be able to do is maybe hover 3 miles above and just like use his heat vision to just, you know, scare the shit out of them until they run out of the limit. Or something, I don't know. Or pull a Superboy Dark from the alternate timeline and just cut them all in 2 from orbit.
Yeah.
He's obviously not going to do that because he's Superboy, but
yeah, but this kind of proves why, you know, Lex, you know, is marred by 2-dimensional thinking. He doesn't think that Superboy is smart. And
yeah,
what
it's
we're
amazing how. Sorry, go on.
Yeah, what we're seeing now is proof that he is smarter than Lex gives him credit for.
Oh yeah. And that's one thing I liked in the tie-in comic. I know we talked in the last episode about the episode with the science fair and the girl that falls in love with him, that it seems like this episode was partly inspired by, or it's probably just a coincidence. But in that episode, we get to see a little bit of just how smart Clark actually is when he fixes the guy's invention for him. I like that they remember in this show that Superman's not a dummy, you know. It's like that thing in, I think it was from one of the Justice League cartoons, and it's just like, I know people think I'm kind of stupid, just a brute force that they send in just to punch something hard, but the reason I do that is because I know that whatever they throw at me, I can probably take it, and then I know how powerful they are for the others.
Yeah.
It's like, it's actually like, while it looks like Superman's a bit of a dummy in those moments, it's actually very clever. And yeah, I forget exactly what episode that was from, but I'm sure I've heard people talk about that an awful lot. And here's the fourth villain of Threesome. The random pirate, not pirate, random cowboy man.
Yeah, the owner of the gambling establishments.
Mm.
This part of this part of the two-parter is more of a character-driven piece than anything else.
Mm.
And the other thing that's a little bit of lacking
Mm.
is there are only two states in the union that allow gambling establishments,
Yeah.
or and those are that's Nevada and New Jersey, because you've got Atlantic
Atlantic
City
City, yeah.
and Las Vegas. They would have to do a lot more in, because remember, Smallville is supposed to be Kansas. They'd have to do a lot more in Kansas to get a gambling establishment uh,
Mm.
legalized.
Yeah, because obviously there are casinos outside of those states, but they must have had to jump through so many hoops just to open,
The
surely.
majority of them are on Indian land.
Right, yeah, I've heard about that. Yeah. Reservation land or something.
Yeah,
Right.
and since Indian land, the reservations are considered another country within the country.
The
Their
rules are
law,
different.
the laws of the state do not apply to those reservations.
Mm. I've always quite liked that, to be honest, because let's face it, the Native Americans were screwed over in so many ways. I hope they're making just shit tons of money. I mean, good for them, That's their reward.
Yeah.
Putting up with all the Europeans coming over, all the British coming over and slaughtering them. It's not the best compensation, but it's better than nothing, I suppose. I'll tell you what, it would almost be interesting with this sort of cowboy casino owner. It would be interesting if that was another returning villain, because we've had characters want to go into Smallville and rip off the entire town before. Like, maybe we could have had the guy from Troubled Waters or something. Like,
Yeah.
maybe he's back, he's got his sights set on Smallville again for some reason, and it's just, I don't know, having another, considering Threesome is kind of billed as the big supervillain team up. It's kind of weird that one of the villains we'd never seen before this episode, unless you count Road to Hell, and the other one is just, he's in one episode, one and done. We never see
Yeah.
him before, never see him again after.
Well, you got to remember something though, Tom. And I know I go back on this a lot. Anything that happened in season 1, they wanted to pretty much forget existed.
Yeah.
There was never another mention of TJ after the season 2 opener. There was really never any mention of anything except Mixes Pitlick. They had to bring Mixes Pitlick back.
Yeah. A few references to Peterson in season 3 and 4, but we never actually got to see him again.
No, we did see him in season 2, though.
Yeah, season 2. I'm glad we at least got to see him in that season. The only other people that really stuck around, obviously, were Ma and Pa, but that's just because they kept the same actors. So
yeah,
it would have made no sense to recast them, to be fair. But there must be another villain that they could pull from season 2 or something.
Well, there really weren't that many gangsters in season 2. That's the thing.
Yeah, but it doesn't necessarily have to be a gangster. There's got to be someone that they could just be like, maybe they're a villain that's claimed, they've turned over a new leaf. I'm going straight. I'm opening a legitimate business, and it's like, no, actually, it's just a cover for all this illegal activity that they're doing. They could
Yeah.
have pulled from so many episodes. Like, I like that. Clark's getting a little bit sarky.
Well, he has every right to. I mean, she just
Oh yeah,
walked into the house without knocking.
but she's probably done that 1,000 times.
Yeah,
Growing up
but
together in Smallville.
how does she know that Clark's in the house? He could have left the house and gone into town again.
Yeah, but he probably would have locked the door. I know it's Smallville, but
Interesting how he figures out how to defeat Lex's sound waves just by looking in the sink.
yeah, it's clever. It shows just how smart Clark actually is. That's his eureka moment. I like it. It's
I wouldn't be a bit surprised that this is when Lana starts to suspect.
yeah. I mean, there's
Because
a
I mean,
whole bunch of times that we think she's starting to piece it together. I know that the writers officially say that it's not really until Rites of Passage that she actually does, but I don't know. I don't know if I necessarily agree with that. I think she puts more together than we realise. And that's probably partially just down to Stacey's performance. She probably just brought a little bit more depth to it than perhaps was required in those moments. But we sure do appreciate it.
yeah. Because I mean, she's got to start to think, why is Superboy in Smallville?
Yeah. Although Superboy's shown up in Smallville a few times over the seasons. Did they try to ditch Metallo then? Did they not want him to show up?
No, I just think that Metallo was being Metallo, and he's just.
They're just annoyed by him.
Well, that and the fact that he's supposed to be keeping a low profile, and yet he goes and gets himself a town car
Yeah.
and a chauffeur.
It's annoying because I'm sure that we've just skipped past it or was talking during it, but why did they choose Smallville of all places? I forget.
It's because our gangster character in the cowboy hat got annoyed that Superboy got involved with the whole thing when the guy was trying to kill himself in the
Right.
in the casino, and he figured, I got to get Superboy out of town, so the only way is to bring the threesome in.
Fair enough. I couldn't remember if the threesome had decided that they were going to Smallville for some ulterior reason. I, obviously, we must have been talking over the part where they were called in.
There are times where Gerard does, the I'm weakened by kryptonite, great, and then there are times where he doesn't. I'm going to lean more towards he doesn't in that moment.
Yeah, it's not the worst I've seen, but it's not exactly his best moment in the show. That's for sure.
And you can definitely see the differences between Lex and Superboy. Lex has it in a metal attache case. It's very high tech. Superboy, it's very cobbled together.
And yet, if it works, I guess Superboy's just proving that, maybe Lex isn't as smart as he thinks he is, like Metallo's mother says. You know, Lex has gone with all the bells and whistles where perhaps it wasn't actually fully necessary. I like that security guard, though. Just his reaction there was just great. I like that. Lana's thinking about going home just because she's sick of her life constantly being in peril. But then it just comes to Smallville anyway, proving there's no way you can really go where you can just be completely safe. It's a
Yeah,
nice
it's like the
enough
line
moment.
that Metallo uses in his first appearance. You can run, but you can't hide.
Yeah.
And that's all Lana's really doing in this episode is hiding.
And I can't blame her, considering how many times she's been abducted. And let's face it, she probably has heard at the beginning of part one that Lex Luthor's escaped prison at a certain point. So she's probably like, okay, I was thinking about going back to Smallville, but no, I definitely am. Because he's
Yeah.
definitely going to try and kidnap me again. Because that's literally the first step to every Lex Luthor plan in this show, is kidnap Lana. I do quite like their outfits in this episode, though. Just, it's a bit more toned down, a bit more subtle. Although I don't like Metallo's jacket, I must admit. I just think it's really ugly looking. Looks more like something fucking Andy would wear. In fact, it
Probably
might have
is
been.
something Andy wore.
Is it actually one of Andy's?
It
It,
probably is.
it really does look like it, doesn't it? Viewers, if you can remember an episode where Andy wore that jacket, let us know. Because that is Andy's style. That's not Metallo. That's not even close to what Metallo would wear in any of the other episodes.
Yeah, he usually wears, nicely tailored suits.
Yeah. It's also weird that Metallo has worn hats in multiple episodes before now, yet now that all the other villains are wearing hats, he's the only one without one. It's just,
And yet he had it in a few scenes before.
yeah, just weird. I do think she was a little bit over the top with the choking motion just a minute ago, but to be fair, I've never been strangled by a mechanical man, so maybe that's exactly the reaction you would have. Oh, I like that.
And now we see what Metallo saw.
Yeah. I do think she's slightly better in this scene where she's so deranged and sort of over the top, but it's kind of the final moments of desperation as the plan falls apart. It's I actually think she's pretty decent there. Although let's face it, when you're acting opposite Stacey Hyduke, it's very difficult to be the best actor on screen.
Yeah.
I mean,
Unless you're
let's
Roy
face it.
Scheider.
Yeah, I mean, the funny thing is with this show, I think we've said many times, I think Stacey is the MVP of Superboy. She's She's the one whose performance was always good. I can't think of a single episode where she was bad. And let's face
Yeah,
it, every other character had at least one bad moment. I can't remember Stacey ever having that.
well, she's a consummate professional.
Well, I don't know if part 2 was better than part 1. I don't think it was. I actually think I prefer part 1.
Part 1, it had a better setup.
I like all the prison stuff better. I can't say that the cowboy guy with the casinos really interested me very much. I think they could have found another way to get them to Smallville if that's really what they wanted to do with it.
Honestly, I think the drawback to this episode is the fact that they're trying to add too much in to basically pad the episode.
Yeah.
Um,
It's
that
almost
doesn't
like
mean
it was supposed to be a part 1, and then they decided to extend it to part 2, but didn't have enough material, so they added a character.
yeah.
No, I wouldn't be surprised as well if that whole final fight scene was supposed to take place in Capital City, because it makes so much more sense to keep Superboy out of Capital City than to go anywhere else to keep him out, because, Smallville isn't exactly somewhere that Lex and Metallo are going to want to stay long term. So really, they're just biding time in this
Yeah,
episode. There's nothing of
didn't
real.
Lex refer to Smallville when he arrived as a dump?
Yeah. Which, part of my headcanon with that is that maybe Lex grew up on Smallville with a secret origin twist or something. That's why he hates Smallville, because that's where his abusive father was from or something, from like the comics.
Yeah.
But that was never obviously established in the show. That's just my own headcanon. But it makes
Although
sense for Lex to hate
technically
Smallville.
it kind of was established in the show in season 3.
How was it established in season 3 that Lex was from Smallville?
Road's not taken. When they're on the Sovereign's Earth, what does
Right.
Lana say when she goes after the Sovereign? You always hated Lex, even when we were kids.
Well spotted. Well remembered. Holy shit, you're right. So, Lex Luthor in this show, I guess, at least on that Earth, is from Smallville. It explains why Lex doesn't want to be there necessarily. So it makes no sense that this cowboy guy would call him up and say, I need your help. Like, how does it make sense that they would actually go? Like, it's like, I'm sorry, we've never met. Go fuck yourself.
Yeah.
Why should we be doing favors for someone we've never met? What are you going to offer us? Free chips at your casino? He's got nothing to offer. It's just like, well, right now we have control of a 3 square mile block of Capital City that we know Superboy cannot enter. What possible sense would it make for us to leave and go to, small town USA?
Yeah, and then of course the gangster says it's Smallville, not small town, and then
I
you
know.
can almost see the look on Lex's face, like.
I know. I only called it small town just because it's that's kind of the theme, isn't it, with the old Norman Rockwell and stuff. It's Americana, classic Americana, small town farming communities and all of that.
Yes.
But no, it's. I don't know if I do prefer this one over part 1 anymore. I'm fairly sure the last time I watched it, I preferred part 2, but not anymore.
There are bits about part 2 that are really good. I mean, it
Definitely.
showcases Clark's ingenuity, his gadgeteering.
That's all the stuff that I love in this episode. It's just the majority of the rest of it, not so much.
Yeah, I mean, Lana figuring out how to cause the rift to grow between the 3 of them. That's a trope right there.
That was clever. And were we just talking over when they saw Superboy talking with someone in a hat and coat? Is that why they were pissed off when Metallo drove up in the car?
Well, no,
Because they thought
Metallo.
he'd betrayed them or something?
No, they got separated, the three of them.
Right,
And then Metallo is coming around a corner and he sees what looks like Odessa talking to Superboy, and then Superboy ushers her away.
right, right,
And then the next scene you see, Lex is by himself, and then Odessa just pops up.
right. I
And
tell
it
you
kind of
why I was confused for a second there. It's just purely because when Lana was wearing that coat, it looked like she had like a hunchback. And I assumed that was just because it's the same coat that Corbin had been wearing, and maybe he'd stretched the coat out or something.
yeah,
Because let's face it, even when Corbin's wearing like that thing that it looks like Andy probably wore, like it looks like he's got a hunchback just because he's got all the fake machinery and stuff of part of his costume, and it just
yeah.
lumps out like that.
Except when he's wearing the business suits. Whenever he's wearing the business suits,
That's true, actually. There was
it-
no hump with the business suits.
yeah.
I wonder why that was. I wonder if they had two different versions of his armor, and maybe.
I'm sure they did. I'm sure they had one piece that was just the front plate that
Mm,
he could wear underneath, a business suit, and then the rest was, when he's full on.
yeah, and I don't know. I could be wrong about this as well, but I have a slight suspicion that they actually remade Metallo's chest piece for this episode. Because if you remember when we discussed the People versus Metallo, we talked about just how almost like it was decomposing. It looked so shoddy at that point. But in this
Yeah.
episode, it didn't look like that anymore. So either they've replaced just individual components or something, or they've built a new one entirely. Um,
I would say they probably built a whole new one using the plans from the original one.
yeah, I mean, maybe they could like pull like the telephone wires and stuff off of it and reuse those. But I think, especially like the bits that are clearly made out of like hard foam, like black foam, it looks like they've replaced those completely. Because I mean, seriously, go back and watch People versus Metallo, viewers, because it looks like it's rotting. Like it's almost like a zombie Metallo.
Yeah.
It almost looks like it's got sort of green sort of fungus growing on it or something in some shots. It really does look pretty shocking in that episode. So I do appreciate that they fixed it for this one. But then again, we know that seasons 3 and 4 were shot back to back, and there are definitely scenes in this episode where it looks like he was wearing the season 3 suit. So maybe this was just shot first.
Mm. It could also be a situation, that they had to redo the suit for this episode, the Metallo armor, we'll call it,
Mm.
because so much of it was done in the daylight.
Yeah, maybe they figured they couldn't get away with it because they couldn't have darker lighting for every scene in this one.
Yeah, I mean, the People versus Metallo, yeah, it's not set at night, it's set in the daytime, but it's a slightly darkened
Yeah,
courtroom.
it's dimly lit. It's atmospheric. It's yeah. Plus, it was a courtroom filled with a lot of like sort of dark wood furniture and stuff, so it felt a lot
Yeah.
darker because of that too. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. Maybe they had two versions, and one was a stunt suit, and the other one was like the hero suit or something. And I don't know. Maybe for People versus Metallo, for some reason they couldn't find the main suit, so we had to wear the stunt one or something. I don't know. There's
Yeah.
1,001 explanations for it. But if anybody watching this was involved in the show and specifically this episode, if you could let us know, that would be really interesting information. I think because right now it's just a theory. Um,
Yeah.
it definitely
It's
looks
supported
better
by
than
a
it
lot
did
of
in the previous
on-screen
episode.
facts, though.
Yeah, it's built up by on-screen facts, but I wouldn't be surprised if maybe they just replaced bits and pieces, or maybe just painted it again or something. Just gave it a fresh coat of paint. Maybe that was enough to hide the imperfections. Um, who knows? But
Yeah.
obviously, we do know that every now and then we get a comment from someone that was involved in the show. So, if you were involved in this episode and you can give us some insight on that, we'd really, really appreciate it. So just leave us a comment. What should we give this episode out of 10, do you think?
Well, it's not better than than part one. So
No.
I would, it's actually a little bit down. So I wouldn't give it more than a 7.
Yeah, I was thinking the same, just purely because I preferred part one, mostly just for the prison stuff. Although I really like the Clark using his brain sequences in this, that was really fantastic. But yeah, I think a 7 is about right, which means that combined, it's probably only a 7.125. It's like a really weird number, but we'll call it
Yeah.
7.1. just for the two of them, but for just for this part, this is a 7. I'm in total agreement. I don't think this episode held up quite as well as my memory of it. Partly because I think the cowboy character was just a bit of a waste of screen time. I think they could have done something a lot more interesting with that.
Yeah.
It's not a perfect episode, but it's still a really notable episode just purely because it's the only time that I can think of where Lex and Metallo team up. Even just across television, I don't remember any other stories on TV where those two characters in particular teamed up to fight
The
Superman.
closest we got to that was Superman the Animated Series, where Lex actually was involved in
Right?
creating
Yes.
Metallo.
Yeah, I guess that does. Yeah, that counts.
And then he sent Metallo out to fight Superman. But then when Metallo started to realize that he can't feel anything.
Yes, I have. That's one of the few episodes I've actually seen. People that watch this channel know I'm not a big animation guy. It's a big blind spot for me, which is why every now and then we do a commentary on an episode, just filling in those gaps. But
Plus the fact that you've never seen the Ruby Spears show. So
yeah, we're working our way through that slowly. Maybe next week we can watch another episode of that. It's been a while.
Yeah.
That would be quite exciting. But yeah, we'll discuss that next week. Thank you all so much for watching. I hope you all like my new t-shirt, by the way, based on Gerard's chest emblem. Custom made, but not all the details came across in the printing, unfortunately, but never mind.
It's close enough.
It's close enough. They never made an official piece of merch for this show, so I thought, well, at the very least, I'll make my own.
Yeah, you make shirts, I make figures.
Yeah, I've got so many custom Superman shirts now. I've already got the James Gunn one that obviously I wore last week and the week before. Yeah. Anyway, thank you all so much for watching. This has been Threesome. Does Vexman ever appear again?
I don't believe she does, although there are the episodes like Who is Superboy that they might have a slight appearance
just clip
of
show
her.
stuff then.
Yeah.
And I don't remember her being in Obituary for a Superhero at any point, so I know she's not in that one. Because we only did a commentary on that one a couple months back. What a shame that this is the last appearance. Again, biggest criticism that we've got for this is we want to see more of her. So I think that's about the biggest compliment we can give to the actress possible. So yeah, we'll see you next week anyway. Don't know what we'll be watching yet. Maybe Ruby Spears, maybe another episode of Superboy. We'll decide on the day. Thank you all so much. Goodbye.